Okay, this is, leave it, just leave it. Krishna Consciousness 301. You ready? Our brahmacharis aren't here. Many of our brahmacharis are not here. This is meant for our brahmacharis who aren't here. What to do. As some of you may know, I've been speaking a bit of late from Tattva Sandarbha because I'm beginning to prepare for a presentation on Tattva Sandarbha over the Thanksgiving weekend. And what I'm going to be presenting this evening is just a small section from this small little book that's Tattva Sandarbha. And it's a little background. Tattva Sandarbha is part of 6 Sandarbhas, formerly called Bhagavat Sandarbha, commonly called Sat, or 6 Sandarbhas. And someone asked me the other day, what's the meaning of Sandarbha? The literal meaning of Sandarbha, it's a particular type of literature. Sandarbha means weaving. And it's the weaving of verses from Srimad Bhagavatam or of Srimad Bhagavatam together to present, with underlines, systematic and comprehensive exposition of Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. Don't kick over that thing. Okay. As you may know, Jiva Goswami, like Srila Prabhupada, wrote a verse-by-verse commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. Did you know that? It's called Krama Sandarbha. And that's number 7, Sandarbha number 7. It's not part of these 6. He also wrote a commentary, another commentary just on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Then he wrote a 3rd commentary that's a subject matter by subject matter presentation on the Srimad Bhagavatam. He wrote 3 commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam. He liked Srimad Bhagavatam very much, as did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu like Srimad Bhagavatam very much. In fact, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings are rooted in Srimad Bhagavatam. We can say it either from Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings find their basis or origin, or the other way. Srimad Bhagavatam presents the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Here's some evidence of that. When Srila Prabhupada was received instruction from Bhaktisiddhanta to go to the English-speaking parts of the world and present the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, correct? What did he bring with him? Srimad Bhagavatam, because that's the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not create or have his followers create a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam to match his teachings on Vedanta Sutra, because Vedanta Sutra is Vyasa's own commentary on Vedanta Sutra. It says right in the Bhagavatam, by Vyasa. This is commentary on Vedanta Sutra. And what is Vedanta Sutra? It's a systematic and comprehensive rendering of the entire Vedas. So Srimad Bhagavatam is also. And Bhagavad Sandarbha was the first attempt. He didn't call it a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. It's an exposition on Srimad Bhagavatam that's, I mean, the system is amazing, and the comprehensiveness is quite amazing. And it's simultaneously intending to give both our Sampradaya's teachings, the core teachings of Lord Chaitanya, as well as a thematic study of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the 6. And so, as the nephew of Rupa and Sanatan, Jiva Goswami had never met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but even when he was small, he heard Lord Chaitanya's teachings, and systematically he studied Lord Chaitanya's teachings when he came to Vrindavan, studying under Rupa Goswami. So he wanted the world, at the audience, there's so many things to say. The audience that he was writing for was the scholarly audience of his day. The style of his writing and the way in which he presented his arguments makes it clear it wasn't like Srimad Bhagavatam is for the public. The Sandarbhas is for a scholarly audience of his time, and scholarly audience of his time is like a skyscraper compared to a groundhog of today. They're, scholars today are puny compared to the scholarship of his time. And that's who he was writing for, to help them receive the reality that Lord Chaitanya's teachings is the highest philosophy, and the Srimad Bhagavatam is that highest pramana. How to do this concisely? Well, we'll do it this. He wanted to share with that audience that Lord Chaitanya's philosophy is the highest philosophy. Now, a scholar following the Ramanuja Sampradaya, they would want to do the same thing. Ramanuja's philosophy is the highest, or Vishnu Swami's philosophy is the highest. So there's nothing wrong in his wanting to do that. It's natural in his devotion to want to do that. That's what he wanted to do to a scholarly audience that didn't necessarily accept Lord Chaitanya as we accept Lord Chaitanya, but his philosophy was the highest philosophy. That he wanted them to be convinced about. And to do that, he had a strategy, 3-part strategy, very simple. The first part of the strategy is found in this book, at least half of this first of the 6 Sandarbhas, Tattva Sandarbha, that Gopi Pranadana very kindly translated and made commentary based upon the commentary of Tattva Sandarbha that came from Jiva Goswami. Not only wrote the book, he wrote a commentary on the book, Sarva Sambhadini. And then Baladev Vidyabhusan made a commentary following Jiva Goswami's commentary. So using those, Gopi Pranadana made it available for us in English. And in the first half of this first Sandarbha is strategy number 1. Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest pramana. What does pramana mean? Pramana means means of knowing something. or evidence. You've heard that word before? Pramana? The English word is even niftier sounding. Epistemology. Woo woo. You've heard of that word before? Epistemology? You've heard it. Don't know what it means. It's the means of knowing something. So, you know this from Ishopanishad. There's direct sense perception, there's logic and reasoning, and then there's scripture. 3 evidences or pramanas. Pratyaksha, direct perception. Reason and logic, anuman. One might think they know something. There's a mountain, there's smoke coming from the mountain. Deductively, there's a fire on the mountain. There might be some other cause of the smoke that's on the mountain, but there's a fire on the mountain. Well, you know, a classic, all men are mortal. Anyway, without going into. Then there's Shabda. That Shabda, it's described in more detail than I'm going to go into here. There's different kinds of Shabda. You know, there's worldly Shabda, like, you know, it's a reliable source of knowledge is Shabda. So like if I want to know if my flight is on time, I'll call the airlines. They're the authorities on whether their flight is on time or not. I don't go ask the garbage collector, is the American Airlines flight going to be on time today? I ask, you know, there's an authority for different things. So that's a Shabda, but there's worldly and there's otherworldly. Aparusheya is otherworldly, beyond the human fallibilities, is Aparusheya Shabda. So the Vedas are the best pramana, and amongst the Vedas, Srimad Bhagavatam is the best, and that's what's the first half of Tattva Sandarbha. And then the main part of Tattvas, the rest of the Sandarbhas, including the second half, which is called the Prameya section. What does Prameya mean? Prameya means through the valid source of knowledge, what is knowable, what is to be known, the object of knowledge. Prameya. So the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam is what? It's Bhagavat Purana. It's the history or the description of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Bhagavat Purana. So Jiva Goswami's strategy is, part 2, Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest pramana, and that Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. And he goes through step by step by step by step in this systematic and comprehensive manner. And then the third strategy, well, it's like A equals B and B equals C, so A equals C. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy is the highest. That's his strategy. So we're going to be discussing a little section in here, because once 1 is done and 2 is done, therefore 3 is established. So if we had more time, I would do this differently. But this is like, you know, compressed a little bit time-wise. So if you were to state what is Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, not a rasa topic or a bhakti topic, but his philosophy, you know, what is the absolute truth? as Vedanta Sutra says. That the human form of life is the opportunity to inquire about the absolute truth. Tato Brahma Jigyasa. So what is Lord Chaitanya's teachings about the highest truth? Without taking a lot of time. The highest truth is a person who's replete with all potencies. Spiritual potency, marginal potency, material potency, and different subdivisions of those. Unlimited potency. He can expand himself, he can expand his energies. Everything, the source of everything has many capacities to expand and present himself in various ways. Unlimited potencies and unlimited ways that he presents himself, and everything is resting upon that absolute truth, who is a person. And the means to approach that person is through loving devotion on different stages of that. So that's the process of reaching the truth, and then there's the fruit of the truth, sambandha abhideya prayojana. So the highest truth, the absolute truth, is a person filled with potencies. So he wants to, his system is, if Lord Chaitanya's teachings are going to be presented in a comprehensive way, one way to do that is to take essences of his teachings. And then Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses. How are you going to comprehensively present the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam? And it's by taking passages from the Srimad Bhagavatam that capture the essence of the Srimad Bhagavatam in a nutshell, and you unpack that nutshell and it has the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. Like, for example, the Chaturshloki verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. Those are verses that Krishna spoke to Brahma. That's the essence of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's one section. Comes in Canto 2, Chapter 9, verses 33, 34, 35, 36. Then another, the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam's teachings, which match Lord Chaitanya's teachings, is Vyasadev's realization. What's that, Vyasadev's realization? Well, Vyasadev's realization is this set of verses, Canto 1, Chapter 7, 4 through 9. So that's what we're going to be discussing. And the premise is that by understanding Srimad Bhagavatam's message is made possible if we understand what Vyasa's realization was, what he experienced as he was instructed by Narada, expressed in these few verses. So as we read in Chapter 5 of Canto 1, Vyasadeva, being a seer of past, present, and future, Tri Kala Gya, he is a knower of past, present, and future. He regarded the upcoming Kali Yuga, and he saw directly its nature, and he wanted to do something because of the bad conditions of the age of Kali, and so he took the Vedas and wrote them down because people's memories are bad. And he did two main things. He divided the Vedas into 4, because originally there was 1, but to make it more easily accessible, he divided into 4 according to the functions of each of those 4 parts. And then he condensed, in addition to divided, he condensed some portions of the Smriti section of the Vedas, in verses that Jiva Goswami quotes. In the realm of the demigod, there's 1 billion verses for the Puranas. And he samshiktam, he condensed them into 400,000, taking the essence without leaving out the essence. He gathered the essence. It's a lot of work. Try writing something sometime. This is a lot of work. And after he completed this compiling of the Vedas, we find at the end of chapter 5, he was feeling himself despondent and very surprised. So Narada Muni came and explained to him why that despondency was there. The despondency was there because he had neglected to singularly and exceptionally and wonderfully just focus on glorifying the personality of Godhead, Krishna. So Narada gave him the instruction to sit in trance, and what you experience in that trance of meditation, then you should compile one literature that just expresses that, which means that the trance itself is the compressed essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. So following the instruction of his spiritual master, that's what Vyasadeva did. And beginning of that section, it says he touched water for purification, sat in his ashram by the side of the sacred river, and followed Narada's instructions. And the first of those verses we can recite together. Does anybody know the verse besides Jai Jagannath? Let's chant together. Bhakti yogena manasi samyak praniyate male apashyat purusham purnam mayam cha tad apashrayam. And the translation, Prabhupada's translation. Thus he fixed his mind, perfectly engaging it by linking it in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any tinge of materialism. And then, that's what he did, and then he saw the absolute personality of Godhead, along with his external energy, which was under his full control. So in his commentary, this is from text 30 of the Prameya section. This is what is knowable through the Pramana, the Srimad Bhagavatam. He takes the terms, so Bhakti Yogena, Manasi. Then he's going to do Pranihate and Purusham Purnam, one by one. Bhakti Yogena indicates with pure love of God. This is the translation taken directly from Gopi Pranadhana's book. This is the conventional meaning of the word as used in the following verse. My dear King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Mukunda, sometimes grants liberation to those who are engaged in getting his favor, but he rarely grants bhakti yoga, pure love for him. So the Sanskrit indicates very clearly, pure love for him is the meaning of bhakti yoga. So this is indicating, this is a qualification or a requirement, a standard that was carried by Vyasadeva, a prerequisite for his realization. This pure state of bhakti. Bhakti yogena manasi, the mind completely absorbed in this way. And this is, I'm using the word text. There's a Sanskrit term, anuchad, which just is another language, simply text. Pranihate, Jiva Goswami says, means completely fixed, as in a state of trance. And he's saying that pranihate means trance because it was the instruction given by Narada. Please remember the Lord's exceptional activities by meditating in trance. And the word there is samadhi. So, fixed in trance means fixed in samadhi. So, bhakti yogena manase samyak pranihate. Samyak, completely absorbed in trance. Amale means without material, without no trace, no tinge of material contamination. This was Vyasadeva's status. So again, the qualifications, amala, this is from Gopi's commentary. His mind was pure, free from material motive, and free from attraction to sense enjoyment. That was his quality, and then he fixed his mind in unalloyed devotion to the Supreme Lord and in a total state of trance. Then the verse indicates what he saw. He saw a pashat. So far it's just this part, text 30. A pashat means he saw. Purusham Purnam. So now we're going to hear what he has to say about Purusham, what he saw. Purusham Purnam. The absolute person, or Purusham Purnam, Jiva Goswami says, indicates the original personality of God, meaning Bhagavan. He saw Krishna, not his Paramatma feature or something else. And it means the original feature of the personality of Godhead with the following logic or reason. The word complete, or purna, purusham purnam, can be understood here in its ultimate sense, free from all restrictions. We're going to spend some time on this. Restrictions has to do with this term upadi. So he's making a statement. This is his practice or his standard or his procedure. He'll make a declaration, and then he'll refer to the scriptures that is the basis for him making that declaration, and then other verses that may embellish the statement made by the scripture that is the basis of his statement. So he's saying he saw Krishna means he saw the original personality of Godhead and his internal potency. We'll come to that in a... Well, let's say it now. He says, just like someone may say, last night it was a full moon. Did you notice? Last night was a full moon. I was thinking of this verse as we were coming to the temple. Last night was a full moon. And if you say, last night I saw the full moon, it implies that you saw the halo around the full moon. Because you can't see the full moon without the halo or the glow around the full moon. So there's no statement directly saying he saw Radha and Krishna. He saw the Supreme Lord Bhagavan along with his internal potency, Srimati Radharani. It doesn't say that, but it's implied because to see the full moon, as for like seeing the full moon on a clear night, you see the halo around the full moon. You don't have to say, oh, you know what, last night I saw the full moon and the halo around the full moon. And you're not normal to speak like that. So now all of this is describing why not the Paramatma feature, why the Bhagavan feature? Or even amongst the Bhagavan feature, Krishna. Because one of the Sandarbhas is Krishna, still Tattva Sandarbha. He's going to discuss these verses again in Paramatma Sandarbha because these verses are so important. So, he refers to a Padma Purana verse for supporting evidence. That is, he saw the Bhagavan feature free from all restrictions. And the verse from Padma Purana, quoted in his Gopi's text, both the word Bhagavan, or personality Godhead, and the word Purusha, Supreme Person, refer in their literal, unconditioned sense to Lord Vyasadeva, the soul of all beings. Okay, so what's he doing? Both Bhagavan and Purusha. Here it's Purusha, Purna Purusha. Both terms refer to Krishna. But then he makes this distinction in two verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. One who desires sense gratification should worship the moon. One who desires nothing of material enjoyment should worship Purusha Purna. Same as here. Purna Purusha, Purusham Purnam. And then a person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of material desire, without any material desire, desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Person. You know that verse? What's the verse? Louder. Very good. There's the translation. That's 2:310. Then he refers to the commentary of Sridhar Swami. In the commentary to text 9, Sridhar Swami writes, Purusha here, in this case, means supersoul. Why? The Supreme Lord, when the total material nature is the single conditioning limitation, parentheses, upadi, of his manifestation. And the Sridhar Swami's commentary on the second, that's text 10, says that the Purusha here is full, Purnam, meaning supreme, Param, that is to say, having no conditioning limitation. What was that? Okay, we're used to hearing the word upadi as in the definition given by Narada Muni. Sarvupadi vanir muktam tat paradrena nirmalam. Right? Rishikena Rishikesha. Prahlad, do you know the verse? Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. Bhaktir Uchate. You know the first part? Sarva upadi vanir muktam. What's the rest? Tat paratvena. You're not familiar with it. Okay. Tat parat. You know the verse? Can you say the verse? Very good. So, for us, upadi is the body, or gross or subtle. So the body, the upadi might be, you know, I'm American, and someone else is Indian, and someone else is African, and somebody else is purple and pink and yellow. So, you know, the body designation, type, or, you know, I'm American, I'm Russian. Those things are what we commonly understand as upadis. A designation of who I think I am as opposed to who I am. Right? We're familiar with that one? So now, how does that term apply to the Supreme Lord? Answer. The term Purusha, like as in Purusha avatars. Himanshu, what's the Purusha avatars?
Those who have the full manifestation of the divine.
Purusha avatars. There's 6 categories of avatars. There's Leela avatars, Shaktivesh avatars, Manvantar avatars, and there's Purusha avatars. What's the Purusha avatars? Purusha avatars. The forms of Lord Vishnu. For the purpose of creation, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, those 3 are the Purusha avatars. And their restriction or their limitation or the single feature that makes them in that category is their function in relation to creation. That's the Purusha avatars. So they're not unlike us, where we become conditioned by thinking of the covering of the soul. The Supreme Lord doesn't have a covering, but the Purusha avatars have a function. They're expansions, or more specifically, they're portions of a plenary portion. They're the category of kala. You've heard that language before. It's a little bewildering. Portion of a plenary portion. It's Lord Vishnu who, his function is, he involves himself with creation, although he's not contaminated. There's no contact with matter, but it's a specific function of his. So Sridhar Swami, who Lord Chaitanya accepted as the authority in the process of creation, or this upadhi, the next slide is all about upadhis too. You'll see some more. Whereas in the next verse, text 10, it's the Purusha here is full. You get what he's doing? Here's the Padma Purana saying both Bhagavan and Purusha refer to Vyasadeva, the soul of all beings. So the soul of all beings, that's super soul. Vyasadeva feature, the Lord of the heart. But in this case, in text 10, he's referring to, the same speaker is referring to he who has no conditioning limitation or no upadhis and thus full. And that's this, Purusham Purnam. We'll come back to this, but just go on a bit further on the term upadhi. So, from the commentary, and you can look this up in a Sanskrit dictionary if you like, a superimposition which apparently limits and defines an object. So like for us, it's the body. For the Mayavadis, they use, at least one group of Mayavadis, they use this language of a pot. There's the sky, and then if you have a clay pot, you can close some portion of the sky in the cavity of the clay pot. But actually it's sky, and all there is sky. And break the pot, and the sky that's in the pot merges with the sky that's around the pot. So their idea is you give up the designation of body, and not only you give up your conditioning, but you give up even this false notion that there's such a thing as a jiva. It's really weird. There's no Hare Krishna. So, a limiting or restricting factor. In Sarva Sambhadani, which is Jiva Goswami's commentary on the Sandarbha, on Tattva Sandarbha, he uses this example of a crystal that doesn't have any color, translucent. You know what translucent is? Clear, right. So if you have a red rose next to a translucent crystal, and you look at the crystal, it may look like the crystal is red. The redness of the crystal is an upadi. The crystal isn't red. There's a rose next to the crystal, and the crystal looks red. So that's an upadi in relation to the crystal. So what's, now back to the previous, this slide, what's the upadi or designation or conditioning limitation or suppressing the Bhagavan feature? That word is used. Suppressing the Bhagavan feature is the personality of Godhead interacting with, not directly contacting, but engaging in the function of creation. That's the upadi of the Supreme. And so the Supreme that is free from any restriction or limiting condition, that's what Vyasa saw. He saw Krishna. Because he's going to write about Krishna. That's what he was told to do, to write about whatever is in his realization. So he writes about Krishna. And the implication is he saw Radha and Krishna, Krishna and his internal potency. So that's this Purusham Purnam. What's the verse again? Apashat Purusham Purnam. Then he saw Maya. Mayam Cha. So he saw Krishna, he saw his internal potency, and he saw Maya, who was Tad Apashrayam. Tad is a pronoun. And Apashrayam, or under the shelter, under the control of Krishna. Maya is under the control of Krishna. This is from the Jiva Goswami's writing in Gopi's translation. It is said, quoting from later on in the same chapter, "You are the original personality of Godhead who expand yourself all over the creations and are transcendental to the material energy. You have cast away the effects of the material energy by dint of your spiritual potency. You are always situated in eternal bliss and transcendental knowledge." So it is said later in the same chapter, and thus the words, "along with his external energy, which was under his full control," Mayam cha tadapashrayam, imply, this phrase implies that Maya is under his shelter in an inferior role. She is not his internal energy, since she runs away from him and keeps at a distance. This is stated in the second canto, chapter 7, where it says, Maya, feeling ashamed, flees the Lord's direct presence. So she, Maya, is his energy, directly his energy, but she's not his internal potency, there's another potency. So this Bhagavan has many potencies, is what Vyasa saw. Of course, the external energy has different divisions, the internal energy has different divisions, the living entities are innumerable numerically, but those are his three principal potencies with their subdivisions. So he saw Bhagavan, and specifically here, he saw Maya. when it is said that Sri Vyasadeva saw that the Lord is, it is automatically understood that he saw him along with his internal energy. Oh, this is the moon example. Okay. And that's text 31. Now, that's as far as I had intended to go. Yeah. 5, 6, and 7 will be tomorrow. So let's see. Let's go back to the verse itself. Summary. In his Sandarbhas, Jiva Goswami wants to present in both a systematic, not a random, but very, very systematic and comprehensive manner. Just like, sometimes there's commentaries on a subject matter within the Bhagavatam. Like Rupa Goswami does this in his Laghu Bhagavatamrita. He wants to talk about Krishna, so he talks about Krishna. And to talk about Krishna, he speaks of the Krishna's expansions and the various features of avatars. It's Krishna Katha. It's very, very wonderful. Or maybe writing on some pastimes of Krishna. Some of the acharyas may write like that. Or the science of bhakti or something. But comprehensive, that's voluminous, mammoth. But he wants to do that with these sandarbhas and in a systematic fashion. And he wants, going back, he wants to show that Lord Chaitanya's teachings is the highest. So he starts with Srimad Bhagavatam is the highest, and then it's a much bigger task. Srimad Bhagavatam is teaching Mahaprabhu's philosophy. So what's Mahaprabhu's philosophy? Take a look at Srimad Bhagavatam and see if it's a one-to-one match. And it's a one-to-one match. So one of the ways to do that is sections of, not all 18,000 verses, that's another commentary, just sections of Srimad Bhagavatam that present core essences of the entire text. So Vyasadeva's realization is one of them, and therefore he several times selectively goes through Vyasadeva's realization to indicate core message of this is what the Bhagavatam says, which is the same as what Lord Chaitanya taught. So now, again, Bhakti Yogena Manasi, Samyak Pranihate Malay, Vyasadeva's taking the instruction of Narada. He wasn't motivated by something material, anything of the material world. He was fixed in complete samadhi as he was instructed to do so. And then he had a vision. He saw Apashat Purusham Purnam. He saw Krishna with his internal potency, and he saw the external potency, Maya, that was under Krishna's control. And tomorrow we're going to find out what else he saw. Yes.
Hare Krishna. I wrote it down, Maharaj, so I wouldn't speak fast as I got to the end of the question. So to better understand more deeply what Vyasadeva saw, what I want to understand is when we say Vyasadeva fixing his mind in Bhakti Yoga trance, was it kind of like the samadhi of, say, a perfected devotee who meditates on different personal interactions with Radha and Krishna in the spiritual world? Or was it more like a static meditation on the divine couple?
What we find in Srimad Bhagavatam tells us what he saw. So, yeah, that's what he saw. It's something like, not the same as, but it's something like Sanjaya. There's a section of Mahabharata that describes that Vyasadeva imparted to Sanjaya a capacity which Vyasadeva had, which was, Prabhupada called it transcendental television. Right? So Vyasadeva was sitting in a tent. Sanjaya was sitting in a tent with Dhritarashtra, describing what was going on out there with, on the battlefield, and hearing the discussion and the whole thing. He had a capacity that the Vyasadeva had. Vyasadeva had the capacity to see Srimad Bhagavatam. Similar to another, for example, is Vyasadeva. Valmiki. He saw the entire Ramayana. He wrote it down. No, to say in an essence, apashat purusham purnam. What did he see? He saw the whole Ramayana. Before it even happened, he saw it. And then it happened. Because the Leela of the Lord is eternal, and one who has qualification may. So he had that qualification. That's what we're hearing. Okay.
How does, in that very nice explanation of how there's those two verses, and one refers to the super soul with a conditioning, the supreme with a conditioning limitation, and the other refers to the Purusha Purnam. My question is, how does Sridhar Swami conclude that the second verse refers to the complete Purusha? Is there something in the first verse that sort of ticks him off to say this is the supreme with a conditioning limitation?
I haven't read Sridhar Swami's commentary, but I can tell you that go back to something that I said earlier. The audience that Jiva Goswami was addressing was a highly, highly, highly educated audience. They didn't need, a computer that had data stored in it to go look it up. They just had memory. They knew, you just like, anyway.
Yeah.
They had, so he's just making the reference. And he's expecting that his audience will know. So I don't know. I'm not his Jiva Goswami's audience that knows, Sridhar Swami's commentary on these two verses, and what is it about his commentary. It's in his commentary. He's just making reference to it. I don't have that scholarship to know. Something in the text and something in his commentary on the text that says it. Okay? Something else? Yes?
One time when we were out on book distribution, a drunk person, he approached us, or we approached him, and he challenged us to explain your philosophy in one sentence. And
that's still challenging. I mean, if we had more time, you could just, raise your hand and say something, Achintya Beta Beta Tattva. It's an essence of Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. But, what does that mean? And what makes everything simultaneously one with and different from? Well, there's a source of everything, and then there's everything that comes from the source. So everything that comes from the source is one with, but not the source of everything, and therefore different from the source. But even more is that source is a person. So, you know, in short, in a nutshell, my dear friend, nice to meet you. In a nutshell, the highest truth is a person, a loving person who has unlimited and inconceivable potencies, one of which, one of the most outstanding of which is his deep affection for those who have affection for him. He reciprocates with our love. And I want to be there. And I want you to be there too. Receiving the fullness of love, because that's what you give. Who knows what he's going to say back? I'll drink to that. Something else? Too much philosophy, huh? Anyone? Should I jog on something? Keep the ball rolling? Should I go to the next set of verses? Well, I'll do this. I'll invite you to look at the next verse. Let's chant the verse together. Yaya samohito jiva atmanam triguanatmakam paropi manyute anartam tatkritam chabipadyate. Translation, I'll read. Due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks himself as a product, a material product, and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. So you can read Prabhupada's purport, look at the word for word, and get ready for tomorrow's class. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.